Hello, Bill. This is your brother-in-law, Paul Franklin. And Jenny has read me the riot act on making. She said I need a super calculator that she can use. And it passed her test, so here we go. I'm going to show you how it works. And as you can see here, your worksheet, if I save this thing right, should open up to a sheet called Initial Setup. See where my mouse is down here? You click on that if it doesn't, and make sure you get the initial setup first. And I've just done some examples with bogus numbers. I don't have a clue if any of this is right or even close to right, but at least it'll show you how to enter the information. So we're going to start off with the initial setup, and you notice that we have the item here, South Woods, dollars per acre, and this is automatically calculated, and it's protected to where you can't wipe it out. And hopefully all these complicated formulas are protected. And no more rambling. I got to keep this under 20 minutes or I can't load it on YouTube. And you notice since this has some timber value, I've entered it there under the liquid assets. And all of our stuff is divided here in what we call undivisible assets. Like we can't divide Ruth's house and liquidate it for into two pieces and sell half of it and still have a house. You either have to sell the whole thing or you keep the whole thing. And then we have what we call liquid assets, what I call liquid assets. And these are items that you can sell and render for cash in a hurry. Like if Victor was a little bit ahead, he got a little bit too much, he could sell a couple of trees, pay you and settle the estate. And you notice in the liquid assets we have timber, livestock, vehicles, farm equipment, tools, and cash assets. As long as it's liquid, it doesn't matter where you put your information, just as long. Now, I personally put bank accounts and things like that in their cash assets and try to keep it somewhat categorized. Because you may not want to sell cows even though they're a liquid asset. And you look here and say, man, I need $30,000, $20,000, and I don't want to sell my cows. So that's the reason I keep these separated out. Over here, these funds are just to be depleted in order to sell the estate. And I have no idea what kind of cash Ruth has. I hope she has a bunch. And I just made some wild guesses here. Pretty much what the typical U.S. American has stashed away in cash in IRAs. And here's the sum of all of our indivisible assets and the sum of all of our divisible assets or liquid assets, and then the grand total of what the whole thing's worth. And all these are automatically computed once you fill the values in here. The next section of this is we got to parse out who gets what. And Ruth may get pissed at Jeannie and take her all the way out of the will, but I think I have these pretty well set up for you. And I must say, talk about prime numbers. We all know 1/3 is a prime number. You can't divide it by anything. So you don't want to do this, and I'm not going to correct it. Notice here, I got 33%, 33%, 33%. That will come back to haunt us later on when we go to the worksheet. So I'm going to keep this example, show you how to fix it. The next thing we have to do is determine who previously who's got joint ownership of these assets over here, because Ruth doesn't own everything in these assets that you've had appraised. So we got to separate that out. Like, for instance, Cosby Town. You own half of Cosby Town. So we got to make sure that you get your full due and don't get screwed. And we put you in here as a 50% owner of Cosby Town. And that way, we don't divide your share at all. We just divide Bruce's share, or Berkshire, however you want to call it. So that's what this is all about. And 50% is not a prime number, so you just type it in. But if I find the chestnut place here, look at these wild ass percentages. And I want to show you how powerful this is. If I double click on this, I'm not sure you have a formula bar in your Excel. A lot of people don't. So I'll double click on that cell and that shows the formula. And what I did is Phoebe owns 1.8 acres out of 11.5. And you can type it in equals 1.8 divided by 11.5. And it will return the correct percent to 8 decimal points, which is close enough for our application. Likewise for Victor, I'll double click on this just to show you. He owns 3.5 acres out of 11.5 acres. So you just type in equals 3.5 / 11.5, and it automatically computes the percentage to 8 decimal places. I don't show all 8 because my cells would be too wide. And the final thing you have to do, you don't have to do a thing on this sheet. What it does is show the amount of dollars of joint ownership. Like Victor currently owns $36,306.96 of the South Woods by my old figures. And it shows what you currently own. Man, you're wealthy. I had no idea. And you and Jane don't own a damn thing. As you can see, the straight zeros down there. And here, Ann does own things because she owns 50% of the Morgan place, excluding Jane's house, and she owns 50% of the Stuckey land if it still exists down in the bottoms. And you'll fix all that up later. So Ann owns a total of $50,000 worth of stuff. This is just for your information, and that's it. I'm not even sure I protected these cells. But it's not important, it's just for your information. So the only entries you have to make in this sheet are the land parcels, or whatever, however you want to divide things up, whatever. And I limited this to 26, I guess, entries because the spreadsheet got so big it wouldn't fit on the screen. I can add up to 32,000 if you want to go through 32,000 manipulations of entering all this stuff in. Just give me a call or send me an email and I can add those dynamically in less than 5 minutes. So that's pretty much what this sheet's all about. I guess I could show you here that these is the amount of assets we have to parse according to these numbers. And this value right there, where my mouse is the value of Ruth's estate. And you can see there's a lot of difference in money between what the value to divvy up is and the amount of Ruth's estate. But first and foremost, we had to settle up with the joint owners before we can think about parsing out anything from Ruth's estate. Now then, we go to the worksheet. And you get there just by moving your mouse down here to the lower left-hand corner and clicking on worksheet. There's a lot of information on this worksheet, but the only entries you make on this worksheet are divvying up who gets what. And here's an example of Victor getting 100% of the South Woods, 100% of the North Woods. You're getting 100% of the North Pasture and the North End and the Chestnut Land. And I certainly don't recommend it, but you can divvy this up into multiple names. Like, for instance, if you and Jane decide you'd like 50% of Ruth's house, if I can find Ruth's house, I've already got it set up that way. You and Jane would have 50% each, both your names would be on the house, and you both could share the income for the rent, which is no doubt more than what you would get renting out the Arthur Field and getting the dividends off that. I say that I have not a clue. I'm just a number cruncher. So I'm going to show you something here on Ruth's house. Where am I here? The Arthur Field. Suppose you try to give 50% to you and 50% to Jane. Look at this red cell. And I said I didn't have error checkers. It will always flag it red if you go over the 100%, or if you go under, it turns yellow. So the sum of these cells has to be equal to 100%, or that'll be flagged. Since there are absolutely no macros in this program, there's no error checking to verify what you enter. All I can do is just alert you, but Jean says she didn't want any damn macros. So this, and she says she can use this sheet. So this is the way it is. She says she's smart enough to see if something's red or yellow. So we'll put this back to 100% just for demonstration purposes. Not 10%, 100%. And again, if you decide to go with some wacky stuff, like the chestnut ground, say you, Paul, and James decide that, hey, that didn't bother me, we'll be in with you, and you don't have to eat the whole thing. You can get very creative here, since I can't remember what share Burke owns or Ruth owns, but I do remember what Phoebe got. So I can just enter in equals 1.88 acres divided by 11.5, and it gives that wild ass percentage. So now then we can come to you and say equals 1 minus this, and that tallies up to 100%. And you can make your formulas as wild as you want. Now, so we'll do that. And this shows you over here, I can't remember if I told you or not, the allocation for each person. Like, for instance, if you want to give all your cows to Jane, you can. But I assume you don't want to do that. Now, you notice over here, the program shows that you got $13,333 coming to you. And Jane and Jeannie only have $3,333 coming to you. Why? Because you own 50% of those cows according to what I set up. You may own 100%, but this is just an example. So down here, you can see all the stuff you got joint ownership, you get credit for it. You get this much money coming out of you, out of this big pot, not out of Ruth Estate, but out of the big pot of the appraised values. And this is how much Jeannie's got coming to her. That's how much Jane's got coming to her, Victor, Phoebe, and Ann. Now you notice down here it's got difference from total assets due person minus total assets received. We've got a red number. And we cannot, this is totally inaccurate if you got any red numbers. If you got a red number, you got a problem with your setup sheet, or your initial setup. And it's always 100% because you rounded the percent somewhere or you had them set up wrong. And I remember I purposely put 33, 33, 33 here. I don't want to tell us to 99%. And for that 99% instead of 100%, we're off $210. And the bigger the division, the bigger this error. So we just don't want any red. And again, I got no macros to force you to do this. But we come back here and we're going to fix those entries that I made. We're going to make that equal to 1 divided by 3. Tab over equals 1 divided by 3. And we tab over equals 1, not 2, 1 divided by 3. And you notice I have no error checkers on this because we catch it in the next sheet. So we go back to our worksheet and look at that beautiful green 0. That means everything tallies up here. Everybody's got what they're due. This is what you've received. And you can look over here and look at what you received. And these values are totally based on how you allocate or parse out the shares. And that's how that works. And you can think with this to your heart's content. As you can see, you're a little bit, you're about 30,000 ahead here, or taking too much. And Jane is a little bit behind. So you take Ruth's house and make your share 40, and Jane's, don't put an apostrophe in there, and make Jane's share 60. And boy, look how close that gets. You're within $9,000, and I'm sure you have enough cash assets to balance that up. You see, Jeannie's about $30,000 behind, and I hope we have enough cash to cover that kind of difference. I don't want to see any land sold or any cows sold or anything like that if possible. And Jean may be very flexible. She's so wonderful. And it doesn't matter to me what Jeannie does. It's strictly her call. I'm out of it. And that's how the sheet works. And see, you're only up, what, about $15,000, which I feel you deserve because you got screwed on the severance package by leaving the farm. So, and Jeannie, I'm sure you're my brother-in-law and you're her brother, so I'm sure she feels stronger about it than I do, and I feel pretty strongly about it. And you and Jeannie can negotiate that, I'm sure, very easily when you get that kind of difference. That's so daggone close. I mean, these values are really close. And I'm sure that you come up here to cash, and this is how you do this. Oh, before I go any farther, I want to show you Phoebe. Total assets due to her were $6104.34, but she's received 12,234. And that's because I originally made the assumption that James and Paul would like to be bought out of the chestnut place. But since they agreed by us just by example, we're going to come up here to cash and banks and see. I paid Ann out with cash. She had $50,000 coming to her, and given her age and John's health, I assume she probably want a cash settlement. So, and the way it sounds, it'd be very difficult for Gene and Steve to sell their land. I guess that's a mess in itself. I don't envy their situation at all. Anyway, we'll get off that. And what I did is I took Phoebe and say, okay, we're going to take 6104 divided by 100,000, and that's the percentage that you would have to take out of that. And I really did that wrong. It should be 6104.34. Yeah. But anyway, what we're going to do, since Paul and James agreed that they're just going to sell this land, I will show you some more creative fill-in. Notice we went over the 100%. It turned red. We didn't go much over it, but when it turns red, we got to fix it. And here's some creative programming you can do. You can equal parent let me get out of here and see the formula we got. We got M16, which is Phoebe's share divided by our minus N16, which is what we're taking out for Ann, divided by 3, because that's got to be divided 3 ways between you, Jeannie, and that's the amount of cash you got. And it doesn't look like we can fix this. We're going to live with that red 100% because of this wild-ass formula we have right there. And there's nothing we can do about that. Let's see, and it does give the correct answer. If you add 6104.34 to itself, it comes out to this number. So it is correct. It's 8 decimal places in this case was not good enough. And I'm too lazy to take it to 16, so 8's what it's going to be. Now then. But we don't even have to do this, since Paul and James agreed they'd be willing to share it. So we can delete that out. And look at our percentage has dropped. And make that 0. And we'll do some creative stuff here. We'll make this equals 1 minus, and we need to put a parent here. I'm sure you're better at algebra than I am. I'm a heck of a mess here. Equals parent 1 minus and share parent divided by 3. And we can just copy that. We can't copy it across. But what you can do, because all these have paste only number, and we can paste that. I thought. Paste only number. Come in here and paste only number. And see, again, since this is a prime, it didn't come out exactly 100%, but it was close enough. And now then, look down here at Phoebe's account. Since James and Paul are in partnership with you, your names are on the same property, which I don't recommend. But if you guys agree, that's your right. You have a right to do anything you want with your property. But given our age, I think what our kids are going to be facing, and they may not have this spreadsheet by then either. So it's something to think about. So all this tallies up, and that's just pretty much how you use this spreadsheet. You just keep thinking you get these numbers really close, or close enough where you can use cash assets to make up the difference. And like I say, I'm sure Jeannie will be easy to negotiate with, as long as they're within $10,000–$15,000. And that's it. Whoops. Shrink. Why are you vocal screen?